From the AM/FM 24/7 radio network, broadcasting from AM and FM stations around the country. Welcome to the Small Business Administration award-winning School for Startups Radio, where we talk all things small business and entrepreneurship. Now, here is your host, the guy that believes anyone can be a successful entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is not about creativity, risk, or passion, Jim Beach.
And welcome back to School for Startups Radio. Again, thank you so much for being with us today. I am very excited and honored to introduce you to my first guest today. We recorded an interview, months ago, and I blew it, somehow erased it. The tape had peanut butter on it. The dog ate my homework, one of those excuses, and I'm just honored that he would graciously come back on the show and not be a spoil sport about it. Just a really, really classy guy. I'd like to introduce you to Brenton Hayden. He is the founder of the Renters Warehouse. You have heard all about it. You've seen their ads. It's one of the fastest growing real estate companies ever. He is the 2014 Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Winter. He's won the Maverick of the Year award. He has Best Management Team of the Year awards by the American Business Association. He won the International Real Estate Company of the Year, the Gold Stevie Award, the Inc. Higher Power Award, the United States Army Honored Employer Award. Oh my goodness. But after Renters Warehouse, he's actually stepped up to chairman and relinquished his CEO role. He's now running a bunch of other companies in some really interesting industries. We will talk about that. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for not being mad at me.
Not a problem, Jim. This was that was one of the nicer intros I've gotten in a while. I know we got a lot of accolades, but not many are comfortable covering so many of them. And you know what? We're sure as heck very, very proud of every one of those accolades. I know some of those are personal, but many of those that I'm most proud about are some of the team member ones, because I've recruited a lot of friends and family to work for me over the years, and to see them get awards for doing great things at the business is also great. So thanks for mentioning that. And thanks for having me on your show. Happy to be here.
You've got an amazing background, especially for someone that's still only 22 years old.
Well, wait, I'm 30 now.
You're all of 30 now? Really?
All of 30. Yeah,
oh, my
all of
goodness.
30. Turned 30 this year. It was a big shindig. I threw up in Minnesota with my closest friends. You don't turn 30 twice, so I thought I'd do it right the first time.
Well, excellent. Well, congratulations on that. And congratulations on all the incredible success. You've started out in the real estate industry, but you've run limousine companies and so many different things. How did you get started? What was the first entrepreneurial thing that you did?
The first entrepreneurial thing I did was definitely the cliche lemonade stand. My dad had a house in Minnesota, and I was on a busy street, and I only lived with him on the weekends. And you bet your buns, every weekend I had that card table out with a new sign and a better Country Time pink lemonade than the last. So that's where the entrepreneurial spirit started for me. It evolved into mowing lawns later, trading baseball cards and pogs and other things like that later. I'm very a self-sufficient guy, right? I've always wanted to make my own way.
And
so
every
entrepreneurial
time
spirit was started then.
And every time that you had a lemonade stand, of course you went to the city government and got a license, I'm sure. And does it just make your blood boil when you read about 12-year-old girl has lemonade stand closed down because she didn't get a license? Does that make you just want to go kill someone in government like me?
It's very disappointing. It's totally inappropriate. It's just not right. It does make me upset. I could go on about the red tape in business, or the overreaching power of government in business, or just the power of media and news agencies out there, and how they have unregulated power with respects to perhaps defaming or highlighting a business. So there's a lot of things in business that aren't fair. That's one of them.
Yeah, it makes me super mad. And in a larger sense, you're very active in politics now, aren't you?
I used to be very active in politics. I've decided after the amount of brain damage that gave me being involved behind the scenes and politics, that's no longer something I want to put my time into.
Are you going to run for office then?
No, never. In fact, that made it real easy for me to just make that a never situation. The public light is far too negative, and that's something that is a problem that plagues our society, just the media in general. And frankly, I want nothing to do with it.
Right. Well, I would love to run for office, but I have like an entire graveyard of skeletons in my closet. So if I were to ever run, there'd be a new article every day about all of the horrible things that I've done. And so,
well, here's the interesting thing. You really don't even need to have real skeletons in your closet. They'll just make them up about you anyway, and the news will publish it or some other way. And that's the plague. That's the problem with politics is people can say and do whatever they want, and there's really no accountability for that. And frankly, in politics, you see that quite a bit.
That is very true. When Rubio got lambasted for his speeding tickets, and it came down that he had 2 tickets in 19 years, and that was the headline, I was like, that's got to be the dumbest thing ever. If that's the worst they can get on him, well, we should elect him Pope, for goodness sakes.
Right. Mitt Romney, for example, the guy, the most crystal clean guy I've ever seen, and then they find a sad face to talk about the one business that he closed because it was, not going well. It was an antiquated business. Well, whatever the stakes are, politics and frankly, being a figure in business will subject you to that sort of public scrutiny. That is just something that is really unappealing to me nowadays.
You used to work for Kellogg's. You were the Rookie of the Year, a territory manager, beat quota 10 quarters in a row. Why did you leave? What was the bug in your shorts that made you want to leave something safe and secure like that? Probably would be CEO of Kellogg's if you had stuck around.
I really had a great time working for that company. It was one of the best companies I've ever worked for. I've only worked for a few, but that's one of the best companies I've ever worked for, and would recommend it to my family or friends to work there again. Frankly, they didn't let me go. I screwed up. I made a mistake, and I was fired. Later, asked to come back, but nonetheless, I made a mistake, and I was fired. I was a 21-year-old hotshot, kind of kicking butt over there, doing big things, and I inappropriately tried to credit an invoice, and I didn't do it correctly and just didn't handle it with good customer service. And I pissed the wrong guy off, and that wrong guy had a lot of clout and didn't like the way I handled the situation. I was at fault, and I owned that. And that guy used his clout to make sure that I lost my job over the situation. Now, I don't think Kellogg's would have fired me or wanted to, but their hand was forced. And to me, that taught me a lot about business. It taught me a lot about respect. It taught me a lot about customer service. Talked to me a lot about clout and political juice and power. It taught me a lot about many things. But I learned a lot while I was at Kellogg's. I valued my time a lot. I think the circumstances in which I was let go were not appropriate. I shouldn't have been fired, but nonetheless, I made a mistake, and it was their prerogative to have me gone, and then so be it. But I used that as fuel to figure out what I was going to do next. I mean, when you have something good and it's taken away by a simple mistake, you can do one of two things. You can, fall in a pit of despair, or you can, climb out of it and do something different. And frankly, somehow, some way, deep down in me, I used it as a fuel, motivation, and power to, get my life back on track and do something bigger and better.
I was let go by Coca-Cola after saving them $1 billion. I now, 25 years later, say it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Was being asked to leave Kellogg one of the top 3 or 4 things that's happened to you professionally?
Absolutely it was. I would have risen the ranks. I would have done well. But I would have peaked, and I would have peaked at something well below, where I'm at today. And frankly, I have been happier, more financially secure, and I've learned and done so much more working for myself and doing the things that I've done that I would not have had the opportunity to do if I was still at Kellogg's. And so absolutely, I would put it up there as a top 5, one of the better things that it's one of those best bittersweet things that ever happened to you, right? It wasn't good when it happened,
Sure.
but it turned out to be for the best.
And how did you land on your feet? What was the first entrepreneurial thing that you did in your recovery phase?
Well, it was a phrase. Somebody gave me a phrase that really was something I held on to deep into my soul to keep my morale up. And it was, your story's being written right now with or without you. And the ending is entirely up to you. But like I said, that story is being written right now with or without you. And it's up to you to take control of your own destiny, your own story, and rewrite the ending. And I used that as kind of my first stepping stone to say, I'm going to rewrite the ending. And I had been fired. Somebody told me to follow the money. What else could a 21-year-old do with no college degree? And this was 2005. And they told me, you should get into real estate. If we know about 2005, 2006, those were, booming years. Probably inflated, but booming years. Well, I did. I went to work for the top real estate guy in all of Minnesota. He did about $70 million a year in sales. Funny side note, I ended up buying his company 2 years ago. But I worked for him as a buyer's agent, and I fielded phone calls from a lead source that he had. And many of those people needed help to rent their home, manage their home before they could buy another or sell the one they have. And so I kept approaching my broker that we need to get into the professional landlord game or the property management business. He said, just refer it to somebody. Just refer to somebody. This is the great time of real estate. We need to be buying and selling. Well, I was relentless about it. Every week in their meetings, I tell them about how many people needed that help. I kept telling him that so much and quantifying and trying to change his mind. And I think he became frustrated with me. And around the time he decided he wanted to start his own company and leave one of the big box brokerages, he decided that I would have been too competitive and potentially somebody that was going to be a competitor to him, and that was too focused on this property management thing than buying and selling homes. And he actually fired me. He called me into a meeting one day. I was thriving. I didn't make any mistakes. And he said, Brenton, I see you as competition. I don't see you sticking around too long. And frankly, you keep talking about this property management. And I'm starting my own company, and I just don't think it makes sense for you to come with. And
wow.
You know what?
Was that a worse kick in the teeth than the Kellogg's experience?
It was, because at that point I was already down and out, and I had taken a pretty entry level job, making about $30,000 a year plus commissions. It came out of nowhere because this time I kept my nose clean and did really well.
Right, you didn't screw up this time.
And I tried to be a good team member, and I thought I was. And frankly, we had a good relationship past that. But yeah, that was a punch in the gut. But then again, that was one of the better top 5 things that ever happened to me too, because I had previously heard that phrase. Your story's being written without you right now, with or without your help. It's up to you to take control of the end. Well, that phrase went right through my head during the 15 minutes that I had to evacuate the office and take my stuff and get out. And I left that office, I grabbed my stuff, and I realized that I don't really have anywhere to go. Oddly enough, I'd only been with him 6 months. Prior to that, I had been fired from Kellogg's, and it took me 2 months to get my license, and I didn't have any income, and I actually had been evicted from my apartment. So here I am, fired from 2 jobs, one really great within a year. The other one was something I was finally starting to be good at, make some money and get my life back on track. Was fired from that, and it was just bad timing because now I was going to be evicted from my apartment. So a week later, I was actually evicted from my apartment, and so fired twice and evicted, just completely down and out, 21-year-old. And I had to start calling around, buddies, friends, whoever I could live with. I was too full of pride to go back to mom and dad. So, in fact, I couldn't find anyone to live with. And so I lived in my car for 11 days at a park that had a shower. It was a Lions Club park in Minnesota. And during a fit of perhaps depression/inspiration, I wrote on a yellow notebook, something I still rather carry around with me, 7 pages of streaming consciousness back to front of what I was good at, what I wasn't, what I liked and what I didn't, where I was going, how I'd get there, the money I needed, and what my retirement looked like, and just all of that. And at the end of it, I had crafted a plan that had me retiring by the age of 27. It had me starting my own business that eventually would allow me to take care of my dad, my family, and retire early, get the dream cars I wanted, and played to my strengths and eliminated my weaknesses. And it was with that I set out on a mission to create the best damn professional landlord company in the country. And you fast forward 9 years, I now have one of the largest property management companies in the entire country with about $2 billion worth of real estate under management. So it was those lumps and bumps and punches in the teeth that I think gave me the gumption, the clarity, and the fact that I had to succeed. I'm living in my car. I'm showering at the park. I've been fired now. My resume's horse shit. What do I do now? And so I had to succeed. And frankly, when you have a need to succeed like that, and you're really focused and ethical, that's all I did is I applied it in business. And I was able to, dig my way out of that hole and eventually create wealth for myself.
We had a guest on, I think, 2 days ago who said that if you don't write goals down, they're not goals, it's just BS. You wrote those 7 pages front to back. Would all of that have happened had you not written it down? Was the writing of it, you say you just played it over in your head, you sat in your car at the Lions Club Park and you went through the entire story verbally, was the writing essential to the success and the actual fact that it happened, you believe?
Absolutely. It was not just so much the words, it's the process, right? It's being in the mindset to say, what am I good at? What am I not? What are my goals? And are they realistic? And, at Kellogg, they taught me this analogy called SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals. All of your goals need to be SMART, using that acronym. And so as I was writing this letter, that was going through my head. So I was making sure that I was actually putting out realistic goals. And frankly, that got me into things like calculating money I would need. What are taxes, and what would it be like after taxes, and how many years, if I earned this much money, would it drop to the bottom line, and how many years, how much percentage would I have to save if I did that to make this work? And then that was the big part. I think that's 50% of the way. The other 50% is checking in on those goals and breaking those goals down into smaller, more actionable, more realistic goals that you can complete, say, in a shorter window. For me, I generally, later, as I started to realize traction towards my goals, I started to break my goals down into 90-day periods and make micro decisions or micro goals that led to the bigger goal. And checking in on those, looking at those, determining if you're on or off track to meet those, always putting that specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely, SMART acronym lens on it helped me actually execute and achieve them. So it's one thing to write them down and to feel good about them and to be thoughtful about what you've written down. It's another thing to actually execute and, take 7.5 years to get there. So I think it's all about checking in and actually seeing them through is also the other half of the equation.
Why did you leave Renter's Warehouse? You didn't leave, but you let your buddy become the CEO and you moved upstairs to the chairman role. Why?
I was 28.
Oh, well, it's time to quit.
I just turned 28. And I was on vacation with my wife in St. John's, Virgin Islands, and I was sneaking away to do work. And she was always annoyed by that. We didn't go on enough vacations. When I did, I was always working. And so she was annoyed by that. And she called me out on my BS and said, listen, you talk a lot of game about this young retirement and this yellow notebook, how you got it all together. And yet here you are sneaking out for emails at 28, and not really living up to your goals, and just called me out on it. And it was more of like she wanted to, get mad at me about wasting time on vacations. It wasn't like a conversation she wanted to motivate me to retire. She just wanted me to know, this isn't going to work. And frankly, I took it the other way. I said, you know what, you are so freaking right. You're absolutely right. I've lost track of the end. In fact, I started to self-reflect and say, what am I scared about? Why did I gotten this far, breaking my goals down into 90-day increments? I do that for this many years, and then I forget about the ending. what the heck is up with that? And I realized I was only scared. I didn't know what to do. I realized I really didn't actually think I could hit my goal. But I was relentless in my pursuit of it, and it just kind of, in my relentless pursuit, I just kind of lost track of whether I would actually hit it or not. Well, her, jab at me made me very aware that, okay, I've reached my financial goal. I've reached my age goal. Is my business, able to support Brenton being gone? And frankly, that was the only other thing I couldn't master. I said, you know what, I think it needs one or two people yet before my company's ready. In fact, I set out to recruit a president and a chief marketing officer, because at the time my role kind of evolved into more marketing and franchise operations. So I brought in a president of my franchise company. I recruited a chief marketing officer for all my companies. And I spent 6 months working with them, training them in. And at that point, I realized I have the financial means. I've aged for my goal, and I now have the team to capably run my business long after I'm gone. What's holding me back? Nothing was. So I decided, I just did it. I quit. I just said, Kevin, you're CEO and president now. It's your show. I only want to meet with you on Tuesdays for 90 minutes, and that's it. Now, my president had been with me 5 years. This is a different president of the franchise operation. So he had a lot of experience, and I had a lot of faith in him, and he was my right-hand man. So he's been running the business now for almost 2 years. He's doing very well. The business is up, still growing, still profiting, in fact, profiting better than ever. I'm still drawing a salary, but I work as the chairman of the board. But by the way, the board's only me. So frankly, I basically just take meetings twice a week with my two different CEOs, and that's how I run my business using, I have a tool that I use that was taught to me called Traction. There's a book out there written by Gino Wickman, who wrote this book called Traction. It's that book that I use to operate my business remotely and not having to be in the business, but rather on the business. So I use that every day to keep me a finger on the pulse of what's going good, what's not going good. And ultimately, it led to me being retired. I eventually moved from Minnesota, where my business was, and I now live in Miami, Florida, and started investing in other things, as you alluded to earlier. There is some consideration right now here today where I'm considering selling some stock in my company to a private equity group and becoming a minority shareholder. And that may change some things. I may have to go back to work for a little bit as an executive with the company to help the new partner kind of take over. Or I may just decline that deal and seeing the new, writing on the wall and the potential my company has, having been away from it for 2 years working on it rather than in it. I may actually decide to go back to it because I think there's some huge opportunities to grow. But, my whole life is up in limbo right now, and the whole idea behind me retiring when I was 27, 28 was not so I could go play golf and video games and get fat and, wake up late on Tuesdays. It was so that I have the ability to wake up each day and decide what I wanted to do that day, knowing that my business or anything else was not really dependent on me to survive. And so there are some days where I work a full week, and there are some days where I don't work at all. There are some months I don't work at all. I go all the meetings. I don't work at all. And then again, like the last month, I've actually been working quite a bit because I have some big initiatives and projects that are important to me and actually fun, things I want to work on instead of things I have to work on. And that's really where I draw the line of my form of retirement. Some of the things I do in my form of retirement are work, but only on the stuff I want to and I like to do, because that's my choice. And then when I'm burnt out or tired, I want to sleep in, I do that too.
I love it. That's an amazing story. Congratulations on being able to accomplish that. I took my wife in, 99, 98, something like that, to the same resort where Bill and Melinda Gates got married, and we had a big suite, and we had one of the kids with us, and we're having a wonderful time. And when we checked out, they gave me my bill. It was like $9,000 or something. And then they said, and Mr. Beach, we have another bill for you. It's your telephone bill. And it was like $14,000. This was before cell phones, really. My telephone bill was more than my suite and food and accessories and spa bill, because I'd spent so much time on the telephone. And of course that marriage ended up in this is a big shocker, divorce, right? Because it fell apart. And so I'm glad you did better on that front than I did. Really congratulate you on that. What are you doing now then? What are these things that are making you get out of bed in the morning now? What do you have passion for right now?
My form of retirement involved me becoming an angel investor in young companies, young people all across the nation in things that I know, like real estate services, and technology-enabled services. And frankly, I like to help people that kind of come from nothing but have a really good plan, the ability to execute, and they founded the business. Those are people I really like to work with now. I'm no longer looking for those investments, as I've exhausted a lot of my resources very quickly on some really great opportunities, which I'll tell you about. One of them is a laboratory in Minnesota called Leafline Labs. It is a grower, researcher, and retailer for the state of Minnesota for their medical cannabis program. So we are in the ingestible and oil-based cannabis programs exclusively for the state of Minnesota. Minnesota has a very strict cannabis law. You pretty much can only be dying in order to be able to get access to it. But it fully legalizes, this law that I just referred to comes into play July 1st. In fact, it just starts. And so I partnered with a really profound group of investors to be the supplier, researcher, and retailer for the state of Minnesota in the cannabis business. One of my friends and mentors also is in the real estate business, but happens to start restaurants and nightclubs. Well, I'm not really into the nightclub business, and I don't know anything about restaurants, but everything he touches in those spaces seems to turn to gold. And so for many years, I've been begging to invest with him. And finally, I got an opportunity, and I'm glad I waited for this one because it's a kind of a Scotch speakeasy bar, Monday through Thursday, with a speakeasy kind of hidden. And then the rest of the time, it's a big nightclub, Friday, Saturday in Minnesota. And that actually opened July 2. I guess I'm not too thrilled about the business as much as I'm thrilled about working with the people he has assembled because they are home run hitters in that line of work. And I'm a Scotch guy, so I intend to partake in the unlimited bar tab at my new speakeasy. So that's exciting. I'm also involved in some technology companies. One's called 15.5, which is a software as a service for human resources departments in facilitating, collecting, and coordinating feedback from your employees and different team members. It's actually a tool that I use at Renter's Warehouse and all my franchisees across the nation. That's where I first learned about it, then they eventually invested in it. And then I'm also a big sports fan. I'm actually a diehard NFL fan. So it's natural for me to do something in sports. And I partnered with a sports betting application called Onside Sports. And it's one of the top-selling fantasy sports betting applications in the App Store today. To name a few, those are some of the newest ones I've done. On top of that, I invest in a ton of real estate. Those are kind of the things that kind of fill my time. Those 5 investments are really quite a full-time job right now. So when I say I'm not looking for more, 1, I ran out of resources, and 2, I'm out of time to dedicate to extracurricular business ventures like that. So while I'm not working at Renter's Warehouse, I'm certainly being an advisor to a lot of business on the side that's keeping me very busy.
Well, it's a very interesting basket of opportunities. I hope they all do well for you. I just did a fundraise for a speakeasy company here in Atlanta that's planning on going national. So you and I need to get our 2 friends introduced to each other.
Yeah, we do.
I also have Crohn's disease, and so your medicinal marijuana oil is interesting to me from a personal level.
Actually, in Minnesota.
Yeah,
one of the
Crohn's is horrible, and I have it really badly. I've had several surgeries, and so I'm going to move to Minnesota. And if I could only find a real estate agent in Minnesota, everything would be great.
for you that'll take great care of you. And furthermore, my father-in-law has Crohn's, and I know the pains and the issues that come with that, and I don't push it upon anybody, and I'm sorry to hear you have to deal with that. But nonetheless, in fact, Crohn's disease is one of the few illnesses that really benefit very much from cannabis oils.
Well, it has been an honor and a pleasure to listen to you. I am inspired by what you've done. It's an amazing 30 years, and I hope you'll come back on the show soon and give us an update of how all these your current basket of investments is going. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It really, really was my pleasure, and thanks for having me. And if you ever feel that I'd bring more value to come back on, you know how to reach me, Jim. It'd be my pleasure to come back.
All right. Thank you so much.